Alrighty. And we are getting ready on YouTube there. Hello, Phil. Hi, everybody who's joining. Feel free to chime in with where you're coming from. And just a reminder as well for those who are joining on Zoom that if you want to talk to all of us and not just Paul and I, then make sure to change that little blue bar that says all panelists to all panelists and attendees, and then you'll be able to talk to everybody who's here. Alrighty, we are ready to go on YouTube. I will do my best to keep an eye on both the comments and oopsies, both the comments and that are on YouTube and on Zoom. And okay. I think that means we're ready to start. So welcome everybody. You all know me. Today we have Paul Owen joining us again. Paul joined us for astrophotography earlier on in our series, and he is back to dive in deeper into astrophotography. Before we get started, Paul, I'm just going to quickly mention one thing that you guys can go out and take a look at tonight if you're, or sorry, not tonight, Thursday night, if you're looking to go and check out the stars and the planets. So I'm going to share, sorry, Paul, I'm going to stop your share. Is that okay?
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
that's okay. I'm going to sneak in and just quickly share Stellarium. I have us in the ocean because we need a good view to the west. And this is going to be on Thursday. Excuse me. So on Thursday, if you head into the evening, we have a planetary conjunction going on. So if you head out just after the sun sets around 9:15 or so, and you have a nice clear view to the west, you will see Mercury and Venus right next to each other out in the west, a little bit to the north as well. So that's going to be nice. Venus is on its way towards the sun. So if we jump ahead a day, for example, you'll see that Venus is heading in the other direction and Mercury is heading up. And so we're actually running out of days to see Venus after sunset for the next little while. So make sure that you catch it now. It'll be a long wait to see it after sunset again. Otherwise, you're going to have to get up at like unreasonable hours in the morning. So make sure you catch it now. Alrighty, and now I am going to turn it over to Paul. Paul, thank you for joining us again.
All right. Well, hello. Good to be back. It's I don't know what's like up there, but down here in New Brunswick, it's actually a beautiful sunny day. It's 23 degrees outside.
Lovely.
And it's the trees and we've had a very slow season for the trees to open up. They were just kind of like, no, it was too cold. We had snow down here last week.
Oh,
yeah, crazy.
I remember. Anyway, so I actually used to live in New Brunswick, and we always made sure never to take our snow tires off until May 24th, just in case.
Yeah, it's crazy, but anyway, it's today. It's starting to look more like summer, so we're going to have that little transition to spring to summer, which is really nice, and it makes it nice when we get out at nighttime to actually start looking at things, because it's getting a little bit later, as you know, getting into summer. But next, the 21st is it's going to start going back the other way. We get more nighttime sky, so it's all good. It's all good. Okay, so today, what I'm going to talk about, actually, between this week and next week, we're going to cover a lot of things. And today, what I want to talk about is just a little bit about what is astrophotography and the different forms of astrophotography. So I'm going to do a few slides just to kind of slide into it and get you kind of familiar with what astrophotography is. And then from there, we're actually going to take, and I have a telescope right behind me that we're going to actually take, and I'm going to basically show you how to put a camera on it, how to balance it up, how to aim it at the moon, where to find the moon, when to find the moon, and all of that kind of stuff. And the reason I want to focus a lot on the moon today is because the moon, if you're just getting into astrophotography, is probably the best thing that you can ever practice on, simply because it's there more than anything else is. You can take, you can take shots of the moon 20 sometimes throughout the month because it phases all the time. There's very interesting things on it, but what it'll teach you to do is to set up your mount and your camera, get it balanced, learn how to focus, do all those things. Because before you get into the really deep sky astrophotography, you have to know how to do all this stuff first. Because once you do the astrophotography or get into doing the deep sky astrophotography, if you've got that stuff under your belt, then the transformation from that to the transition from that to the deep sky is going to be so much easier. And plus, you'll have some instant gratification right away, get some fantastic shots that you can show with your friends and share with your friends and do all kinds of wonderful things. So that's kind of what I have in mind to do. So I think I'll start with our little slideshow.
And as always, folks, if you have questions, please send them into the Q&A as we go, and I will interrupt Paul liberally to make sure that we answer them all.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now, or I'm going to try to. And I think am I sharing?
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, well, there we go. This is great. Okay, so so astrophotography, it's a whole lot of fun, and at the same time, it's really frustrating by times. It's one of those hobbies that you have to be a bunch of different things to do this. You have to understand optics a little bit, and I don't mean to make that sound difficult, because it's not. You just have to know how to. You have to understand electronics a little bit, because you're using computers on some of these go-to mounts. And then you have to know how to use software to be able to take all this information that you gathered and turn it into something that you can be proud of and then absolutely enjoy. So there's a lot of different things that you have to learn how to do when you're doing astrophotography. And at the same time, there are different types of astrophotography out there. So astrophotography isn't necessarily taking pictures of nebulas all the time. Astrophotography can mean many things. So let's move into the next slide here. So what is astrophotography? So basically what it really is, it's a combination of both photography and astronomy. And why do a lot of people do it? Well, a lot of people do it because they just love taking photographs, and they just kind of morph into that. And then they learn about astronomy, which is the route that I took. I knew not very, and I still to this day, to be totally frank, don't know that much, or as much as I should, about astronomy as such, but I know where to find things, and I know the things that I like to look at, and I know the things I like to take pictures of. So, but the other side of it is, what's really nice about astrophotography is if you do want to study some things, especially the moon, and if you want to look at certain craters and really kind of get to know some of the features that you're going to see there, well, there's nothing better than taking a really nice, clear, crisp snapshot of something that you can blow up, and then you can sort of go all around there as much as you want to and find the, maybe if you're looking for the straight wall and you really want to see what that straight wall looks like and where is it on the moon and what's close to it and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's the beauty of astrophotography, instead of just having to do it standing outside in the freezing cold, because sometimes that's what you're going to have to do. And this way there, you can do it at your house, at your leisure, you have it on your computer, it's just relaxing. And amongst all of that, you have the satisfaction knowing that I took that picture. This is really cool. So that's, that's kind of what astrophotography is to me. It can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people.
That sort of I took that picture feeling is, you look at the pictures that Cassini's taken of Saturn and stuff like that, and you're like, they're beautiful, but that little blurry picture of Saturn that you take on your phone through a telescope, I don't know why, but that's the one I'm always like, oh. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's not a scientist who's studied years and years. This is just a guy going out there, or girl, going out there and just having fun and enjoying the heck out of it. Mm-hmm. So there's different types of astrophotography. There's astrophotography, which covers nightscapes. There's astrophotography, which covers planetary and lunar and solar. And those three are all kind of married together because they have a very common thread going through them in terms of how we acquire images in those three types of things. And then, of course, there's deep sky astrophotography. So in nightscapes, for example, there's things like the Milky Way, which requires a certain kind of setting and camera and, not a whole lot of stuff to get shots like that. Then there's constellations. You can do constellations. I mean, we've got 88 of them. We don't see 88, but there's 88 around there. And if you like to travel, you might be able to see 88. But there's constellations you can take photographs of. And of course, there's moon rises, moon sets, sunrises, sunsets. And again, that's a whole other kettle of fish that you can, that you can do. With lunar, solar, and planetary, and we're going to talk a lot about the moon tonight. And in actual fact, I'm going to show you how to take some images through a DSLR. Just take maybe a stack of 20 images, stack them all up and come up with a nice picture. And at the same time, I'm going to show you also, if you want to get into a little camera that takes a whole lot of frames really quickly, like videos, and I'm going to show you how to do that, capture the videos and then put them into some software and make some pictures. So we're going to concentrate on the moon for that. But once you've got that down, once you've kind of got the moon under your belt, then the sun is exactly the same thing, except you have to deal with filters because you got to be safe. and in different types of telescopes. But the principles that I'm going to show you are all the same for that. And the same as planetary imaging as well. Planetary imaging is a little different in that you have to really magnify to get those things big. So what we're going to talk about today will lead into the ability to do some of that stuff too. And then of course there's deep sky objects. And this is one that everybody just, you know, they just like, oh my gosh, I took a picture of a galaxy, I can't believe it. Or I got a picture of, you know, gosh knows what. And when you take that first picture, I remember the first time I got a picture of M31. It was a green blob.
Oh, but it would feel so good. Yeah.
It was the most amazing green blob you'll ever see.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Anyway, I remember I posted that, and people just, you know, they of course automatically responded. And I would have bet you a lot of them are looking at it saying, well, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to like it anyway. It didn't matter to me because I get a like for my green blob, you know?
Yes, yes. Oh, it feels so good.
So anyway, so it's a kind of a thing where you dive into it. You start out, you get these little victories every time you go out there, you do something, you got it right. Even if it's learning how to polar align. Oh my gosh, I polar align my scope. I left it on the moon and it tracked it all night long. Great, you know, that's a victory. So this is a hobby that you'll learn a lot of different things, and there's a lot of victories that go along with it. And there's some frustrations, but that's the whole idea behind the challenge, right? Because it is a challenging hobby. There's no question about it.
And that's actually part of the reason I like being part of the RASC, because when you have successes, you can go to other people in the society and go, I did this really niche specific thing that none of my friends appreciate.
You're probably doing a lot of that with like the telescope down in California.
Yeah, the day that I actually plotted a light curve for an exoplanet transit. Oh, you should have heard me in the office. I was running around with my laptop going, look at my chart.
That's what it's all about, right?
That's what it's all about.
Oh, that's fantastic. So anyway, so that's deep sky objects. So they cover everything from galaxies, nebulas, remnants, planetary, nebulas. You can do comets. You can do, you know, you can look for asteroids and track some movement. There's lots of stuff you can do with deep sky. So what excites you about the night sky? And that's really what you're going to have to kind of think about for yourself. You know, what do you like? Do you like the moon? Do you like nebulas? Do you like what? I put this little cartoon in, which has got nothing to do with what we're talking about. I just thought,
I think it's
so
cute.
this is the sun, right? And all the planets are kind of, you know, putting them up to the task, kind of against the wall. Not everything revolves around you, actually. I just thought it was cute, so I thought I'd show
That's a very cute one.
Okay, so Nightscape equipment. So this is, and I'm just going to kind of breeze through this section because I covered some of it the last time, but there are some settings and things that I didn't put on there that I want to put on there. And for those who are tuning in for the first time, I just want to cover this just relatively quickly. So for Nightscape equipment, the best thing that you can use really is a camera that you can take a lens off of, whether it's a DSLR or now, of course, the mirrorless cameras. Because you want a variety of focal lengths on there so that you can do different things. You're going to want your lens, you're going to want your tripod, sturdy one if you can help it. An intervalometer is an absolute wonderful thing to have, and I'll explain that as I show you how we take pictures. And some memory and some batteries. So those things you're going to need for some Nightscape stuff. And the technique is basically is mounting your camera to a sturdy tripod. And the reason you do that because we want to eliminate the blur when you take the picture. Shutter release or self timer, and that of course takes the handshake because you cannot put a telescope or a camera in a telescope and press anything without getting some shake, and that's just going to absolutely ruin your image. So we need to know how to use a shutter release. Removable lenses, like I just said a minute ago. Bulb settings, excuse me, where you can go to, pardon me. We can go to manual on your camera because there are times you're going to need to expose for longer than 30 seconds. So you're going to need to be able to do that. And live view is really, really important for your setting up your focus and looking back at some of the things that you're doing to make sure that you got your everything framed right and so on. So For constellations, and I'm only putting these screenshots up so that you can, for those who want to go out and just take their camera, put it on a tripod and try some of these are just some settings that you can go with. So for constellation settings, you know, there's exposures anywhere 15 to 30 seconds. If your camera lens will go down to f2 or f2.8, that's basically how big or how small your lens will open up to gather light. You know, the lower the number, the wider it is. So so that's important. And sensitivity for your ISO 800 to 1600 is a real good starting gate. And make sure to use the widest lens for your constellation. So if you've got a typical kit lens that's 18 to 55, which most of them are, try to bring it back to the 18 because it'll give you the widest swath of the sky. You can capture more that way. You'll notice here in that picture of Orion, you can see Orion, you can see Taurus, and you can also see the Pleiades, and you can also see Sirius. So, and I'm serious about this.
Hey.
So these things, you can capture all of that wonderful stuff to look at, even some clouds going by, which is kind of what we got there, if you have a nice wide angle lens. So use the wide angle setting. So
I'm just going to mention quickly that, and I mentioned this in the chat, and I sent out the link as well. So if you didn't see that, a reminder that if you want to get back to any of these settings, we do have this up on YouTube, and it's going up on YouTube right now. So you will be able to go back and check the video or screenshot it, whatever you'd like for those settings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Settings for moonrise, moonsets. Again, depending on the moon, exposures anywhere from 1 to 10 seconds. Aperture from f2.8 to f5.6. Most kit lenses are f5.6 or f4. So, you know, you can get shots like this with an f4, because I shot that with an f4. Sensitivity start out with ISO 100, but just remember that these settings will vary depending on the phase of the moon. So when you're in a full moon, obviously it's much brighter. So you're going to change things to accommodate that. You're not going to need as much aperture, and you're going to need shorter shutter speeds because you've got lots of brightness to deal with, and so on.
There's just a little comment in the Q&A mentioning from Richard Taylor saying that if you have DSLR lens, if your DSLR lens has image stabilization, it should be turned off.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and the reason it is because when you handhold a camera and you're taking pictures, the whole point behind the stabilization is to compensate for you moving the camera, right? So when you have it on a tripod, the mechanics inside are still wanting it to move because it wants to track something. So actually, you will get a little bit of a blur if it's on stabilization. So you need to turn that off if you're on a tripod.
Good to know. Cool.
That was a good point. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and so the Milky Way shots, again, 20 to 120 seconds. I'll get to that 120 seconds in a second. Aperture f2 to f4. When you're doing Milky Way, you're usually in a very dark sky, so you want as much light gathering as possible. So open up that lens as big as you can to gather in as much light as possible, because the more light you can get in, the shorter you have to expose, which means you're not going to get the star streaks and all that. Sensitivity anywhere from 1600 to 3200. And anything, if you see in the bottom where in the red, it says exposures beyond 30 seconds will require a sky tracker. And the reason being is anything beyond 30 seconds, you're going to get star blur, unless you want star trails. But if you don't want star trails, then you definitely want to put your camera on a sky tracker, let it follow the rotation of the Earth, and then you'll be able to get those nice Milky Way shots with a lot of depth to them. And of course, settings for star trails, anywhere from 30 seconds to 60 minutes. Now, and again, I want to kind of qualify that. If you're doing 30-second exposures, you're going to do a whole bunch of them. If you're doing a 60-minute exposure, you're going to do probably 2 or 3 of them. The trouble with doing a 60-minute exposure is if somebody hits the camera, if a wind comes up, if airplanes fly through it, you've lost that exposure. But in a 30-second exposure, and if you're doing a whole bunch, well, then there's software that actually, because it's once you get beyond a certain number of frames, there's algorithms in software that tell you, okay, you're beyond this. If an airplane comes through some of these slides, we're going to basically take that right out of there. You're not even going to see it. So you can get rid of a lot of that stuff through some of the software, or if you're blinking your frames as you've taken them all, and as you go through them, if you see frames that aren't acceptable, well, you just basically delete them before you stack them. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to do that. So, so again, I always recommend to do the 30-second to 1 minute and get a whole bunch of them, and you get better results.
There was a question in the Q&A, which is, what is the best time to stop a star trail? I assume for like optimal swirlies?
The best time to, what was the question?
To stop a star trail. So like the best time to, how long to expose the image for? I think it comes down to like how long the trails are that you'd like.
Oh, yeah. To get what you see on the screen, that's not my shot. That's just one a different Wikipedia, but I did a shot similar to that. And in order to get trails that'll give you that much, you'd be probably a couple hours, 3 hours at least, at 30 seconds. So you're going to do 30 seconds, you're going to stop for a second, you're going to do another 30 seconds, you're going to stop. And basically you're just following that along. So if you want really, really long trails that aren't circular like that, then go more towards the east or the western sky. If you want those nice circular movements, then in the northern hemisphere, go north, go towards Polaris, and you'll get that circular, because everything kind of rotates around Polaris in terms of how we perceive it. And two, depending on where you are on the Earth and the angle that you're looking at Polaris, it can be quite high up. It can be, maybe not so high up. Right where we are in Eastern Canada, out here in New Brunswick, we're at 46 degrees. So we get a really nice, when we do a star trail, we get a nice height to Polaris, and we get a nice long trail. But if I want something that's sort of short and then very long to the end, then what I'll do is I'll just kind of tilt my camera. I won't put Polaris in the center. I'll put it off to one side, and then you get the best of both worlds. So it's really just a matter of experimenting with it, really.
Okay, there are a couple extra questions. There's one very specific question, which is confused about your suggestion to adjust the ISO. Sounds more like an advanced astrophotography question to me, because I don't understand it. But shouldn't you always use unity gain for your specific camera to get the best signal to noise ratio? ISO doesn't matter when stacking and stretching, right?
Okay, well, right now we're talking about DSLR cameras. We're not talking about astrophotography cameras. So in a dedicated astrophotography camera, that would be one thing. In a DSLR, it's a matter of experimentation for a number of reasons. You have to consider your optics. You have to consider your sky conditions. You have to consider your what border zone that you're in. How dark is my sky? There's a number of things to consider, and that's why you need the flexibility there. If you're shooting deep sky, you're obviously going into something that's a lot more controlled, or should be as controlled as possible. And if it's not, then you filter the heck out of it and do things like that. And then when you're doing that, then you want your camera as stable as possible. So when I'm doing a lot of my deep sky stuff, I do use a dedicated astrophotography camera, and I do use unity gain on it. But that's where I would use that setting.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Thank you. That seems very, yeah, sounds a little bit too advanced for what we're doing today.
Yeah.
And then one last question, which is, I don't know if you actually have photographed the Northern Lights before, but if you're photographing the Northern Lights, is it similar to the settings of the Milky Way?
Actually, it is. They say the best ISO for that, if you can get to the dark sky where you can actually see the lights a little tiny bit with your eyes, then ISO 400 is a really good setting. And take it up as long as you can before it starts to blur out on you. So use a wide angle as possible. 400 ISO is what's the most recommended starting point is, and open the aperture up as wide as you can.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. That wraps up the questions that we've got so far. And on to your next thing.
Okay. So my next thing was, after all of that, there's some planning software, because you have to plan for stuff. So Stellarium, which is Chris has covered extensively in these series. I highly recommend Stellarium. And in fact, I'm going to show you some uses for Stellarium today, and I'm not sure that Chris covered. There's also the timeanddate.com/moon. So if you want to know when the moon's coming up, when the moon's going down, what phase it's going to be in, all of that stuff. Heavens Above, which is just a really good overall site that a lot of people go to for any information regarding astronomy. And the Clear Dark Sky chart is something that everybody has, that you can look up in your own very area, and it'll tell you your sky conditions. So if you think, okay, I'm going to go out and take a picture of something tonight, but then all of a sudden you've got really, really high humidity in the air, it's moist and all that kind of stuff. Well, when you're doing planetary or lunar work, it's not the best condition to take photographs in. So you kind of need to know that. So there's a chart right for if you live in Toronto. There's a clear dark sky chart for Toronto. I live in Hampton. There's a clear dark sky for Hampton, and it tells you everything. And probably we'll go into that in the next session.
Excellent.
And I had some humor. I'm not going to get into those jokes because I want to move right along. Okay, so let's get into this thing called lunar imaging. What I call lunar imaging. Now, can I scooch that up so you can see? There we go.
There we go.
So lunar imaging is something that I still do to this day. I just can't stop taking pictures of the moon. It's so easy to do. It's so instant gratification to the tens. It's so interesting. There's so many things to see on the moon, and there are so many things you can discover on your own. And what I mean by that is most of the craters have had some form of documentation on them, certainly, because it's been, the closest thing to us, and been doing it forever. But sometimes when you're looking at things, and sometimes you get certain shadows, and you can find certain things on the moon that maybe somebody else hasn't looked at. It's almost like creating your own asterism, I guess. And there was one that we were at a Fundy National Star Party out here in New Brunswick, and there was a bunch of us together, and we found a feature that we never noted before. And there's a feature on the moon that you can only see for a very short period of time. And look at it. You remember those cats you put on the wall that got the tails that click, the clocks?
Yeah.
The cat clocks?
Yeah.
The tail that goes click, click, swings like a pendulum. The cat's eyes move back and forth, and it's got a clock body on it. There's a feature on the moon looks just like that.
No way.
There is. And one of our guys in New Brunswick here, we have a little magazine we put out for RASC called The Horizon. And he put it in. He actually, I think either he sketched it or he got a photograph of it. And it's in The Horizon. And if you look up Horizon RASC NB, it's just been posted. So if you want to see that feature, it's really cool.
I'll see if I can find it while you're presenting.
Yeah, but that's one of the things that you can do with the moon. So you can, it's just one of those wonderful things to look at. Just
absolutely. There's one quick question about the image that you have up there. What software is that?
Okay, that software that you're looking at is called Backyard EOS, Backyard EOS, or however you want to pronounce that. And what that is, that's a software that was developed specifically for DSLR cameras, so that you can not only take photographs of, with an intervalometer and stuff we're going to talk about here, but if you want to get into this kind of software, then you can actually pre-program your camera to, you can do runs of images. So if you want to do 50 images at so many seconds and this exposure and so on, then you can do your darks and your flat. Anyway, all that stuff you can get into. But it's a software that allows you to basically automate what you're doing. It's fantastic. It really is. So it's called Backyard EOS. It's not a freeware. You have to pay, I think it's $50 for it, but it's worth its weight in gold if you're just getting into astrophotography and you want to learn this stuff. Because once you've learned your camera, when you go onto this software, all the things, the categories, features that are on there are all camera based. So instead of you having to go through all your submenus finding stuff, it's all laid out right in front of you. So it's a really nice software for that.
Awesome. And yes, okay, so Craig just spelled it out in the chat, and Leon added it in how it's spelled in the question and answer. And apparently there's also a Backyard Nikon if anybody is not a Canon person. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and there is. And they've made some improvements to this too. So it's a really powerful software. It's very, very nice, especially if you already have a DSLR. Okay, so where was I? There I was.
There it is.
Okay, so technique. So how to plan your moon shots and capture shots. These are things we're going to talk about here once I get over onto my scope, is how to plan your shots and how to capture sharp images. We're going to talk just briefly on afocal photography, which is taking your smartphone and basically getting a nice picture of the moon with your telescope. We're going to talk about how to capture a full disc shot with the amazing sharpness and dynamic range using your telescope. And this is where it really gets a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to also get in, and that's when you're using your DSLR, doing single shots. And then we're also going to talk as well about video and how to take high frame rate images where you can collect, like 1,000 shots in 30 seconds and stack them all up and get some really, really cool images. So the equipment that you're going to need to do this, and on the very top, there's 3 different cameras, and I put that purposely because there are 3 different techniques really that you can go for. The first 2 are the easiest ones, and those are the ones we'll cover today to a little bit of depth. Is a smartphone adapter. Then there's the DSLR, and the reason I'm showing you that one is because when I talk DSLR this way, I mean putting it into a telescope, not using a lens. And you're going to need a couple of things for that. And then, of course, there's a high frame rate camera, which you're going to need a computer to be able to operate to do that. And then down at the bottom, you're going to have to figure out a telescope if you don't already have one. And then, of course, you're going to need a mount. And there's different types of mounts that you can put on for this. But the nice thing about lunar and planetary photography is you can use an Alt-Azzy mount as opposed to an equatorial. I'll get into the differences after. And that's the one that when you go out and buy a telescope package, usually comes, a lot of them are basically Alt-Azzy, and they're easy to use. And because you're taking shots of items that are very bright, you don't need long exposure, so you don't have to worry about tracking sky and all that to a degree. So anyway, so you need the mounts. So the only one that you need a laptop for will be the high frame rate camera, or sometimes, like we just saw a few minutes ago, the DSLR, if you want to use, say, a backyard EOS kind of a software program. And so briefly, afocal photography, very simple. I covered it the last time I talked with you. There's a little clamp that you can see on that smartphone, and it's the thing that's in the back there. I don't know, can you see my mouse over that?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay. So so there's the smartphone, but everything else that's holding the phone is hugging it on the side, and it's got that clamp and it's got all those orange pieces. That's the actual adapter that will allow you to hook up to a telescope. And I'm going to show you how to do that in live terms here. And I'm just showing a Barlow lens. I'll get to that in a minute. This is called afocal photography. The nice thing about this is all you have to do is, once you've got your telescope looking at the moon, or if you're just out and somebody else has a telescope. Right now it's kind of hard unless you got a brother or sister, I guess, who's got a telescope. But if they have one, it's just a matter of clamping onto their telescope and then just basically pressing your button and taking a picture. It's really that simple. The only things to consider are if you do have your own telescope and you want to get different perspectives of the moon. Like if I want a nice wide angle shot, I want to see the whole disk. Well, then I'm going to want to use an eyepiece that's going to give me a wide field of view, because the only thing that changes the magnification in your telescope is the eyepieces when you're doing this kind of photography. So, so basically, you can go anywhere. And what I recommend is that very first one. And I think Chris showed one last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, his eyepiece.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about that for the moon is that, if you find an interesting feature on the moon, like, because there are times you're going to see what they call the lunar X or the lunar V, there's some really cool features that you want to zoom right in on. Well, then with that eyepiece, zoom right in. And once you're in nice and tight, put your phone back on and snap your picture. So it'll give you a lot of variety. I'm showing you the 2-inch one because that clamp that I just showed you will work with both 1 1/4 and 2-inch eyepieces. And most people's telescopes come with a variety of little eyepieces. If they don't, you can get a Barlow. So if you've only got 2 eyepieces, well, then you've got 4 eyepieces, because the Barlow will magnify whatever you have by 2, 3, or 4, depending on whatever your Barlow is for strength. This one happens to be 2 times. So that's just a little magnifier. So if I've got, say, a 20mm eyepiece, I'll pop it in there, turns it into a 10. So now I've got a 10 and a 20 focal length just by using that little Barlow. So that's basically afocal type of photography with a smartphone. So it's really quite simple.
I want to mention as well, I actually just grabbed one of those little adapters. They're not the NXYZ, because I am not that fancy, but just a slightly cheaper one that doesn't have like little knobs to move it around. Yeah. And it was like $40, and I used it on my binoculars the other day. Yeah, it actually works on them, just barely, but it does.
Oh, great. Did you find it difficult to set up or no?
No, it was really easy to set up. I only set it up in the daytime because I am not a functional insomniac, and I didn't. And the moon is in early stages right now. But you can see. So this is. I also didn't clean off my lens, but you can see Oh, let's see if it'll,
Oh,
there you go. So that's a building about a kilometer or two away from me.
fantastic.
That's still not, there we go.
Oh, there's
That works.
look,
Works pretty good.
building. Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
can read the name of it and everything. Nobody find out where I live now. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Okay, well, you know what? I think this is the one point where I'm going to have to show because I'm going to stop sharing just for a second. Does that put me back?
Yes, you are back. You're
Okay.
full screen.
Okay, so I just want to show you that. I don't know if you can see it because I can't see what I'm doing here. I'm just going to.
We can see it. Yeah, we can see the telescope.
Okay, you see it? Okay, so this is that little adapter I was telling you about. So basically, that's it right there. So it's just a little clamp, and it's it's got a lot of stuff on it, but it's really, really, really simple. So all you're going to do is basically you open this up the size of your eyepiece. That's all you have to do. So on my telescope, I was pointing outside, and by the way, I owe you an apology because the last time we talked and I did this, you said, "Oh, there was a bird on your thing."
Yes, I did. Yeah.
I missed it because I was
That's okay.
through it. So. But
That's
anyway,
okay.
today, the reason I brought that up was because I was doing this today, just kind of getting this all set up for this chat.
Yeah.
And I put it on, and sure enough, a cardinal landed right
Oh.
on. I said, "All right." So I snapped a couple of pictures through the telescope with a cardinal.
Oh, perfect. Oh, that's amazing.
Anyway, so what's on this telescope here is a 1 1/4 inch eyepiece. That's very standard, very typical. So all you do is take your adapter. You snap it on really, really quickly and easily. Take your cell phone, and this is after you've already set up your telescope, and I'm going to cover how to do all that for the moon, but I just want to show you this. So you take your phone, you put it in there, then all you do basically is just zoom in and set up your telephone so that your camera lens that's on the back side is right in perfect center of the eyepiece. It'll show up as a nice circle, just like Jenna's photo did. And once you've got that in there, then you go to your telescope and you just make your little bit of adjustment to get it nice and crisp and clean, and just beep, you can just touch it. And with cell phones, they're very, very sensitive, so you really don't have to do a whole lot. And there you have it. Now you've got a photograph that you can, in 2 seconds, you know you're going to do it. You're going to share.
Yep.
Going out there, look at this. I just took this. Isn't this wonderful? And that's so this type of photography is a lot of fun. It's very, very simple. If somebody's got it on Saturn or Jupiter, you can do all the same things with that. So that's very, very cool.
Awesome.
All right, enough about that. So let's go back to share again. And I'll go back here. Okay, so now we're going to talk about lunar telescopes, lunar imaging rather, with a telescope and a DSLR.
Just quickly.
And that's actually a screenshot. Can you see that picture, Jen?
Not yet. You haven't shared the screen, so we'll get you to share the screen again. But I have. That's okay because we were chatting about telescopes instead. I have one quick question from Dan, which is, what's the difference between a Barlow and a PowerMate? I've never heard of a PowerMate before.
A Barlow is basically it's an amplifier. It's just a piece of glass that you basically take one of your eyepieces, you stick it in, and it magnifies. It's not parfocal, which means that if you put different eyepieces in, you're going to have to adjust the focus each time. Okay. And with the PowerMate, and there is degradation. Once you get to a certain point, when you start using certain eyepieces, there's a part where it won't amplify really, really good. I have a PowerMate here, and I use it a lot on the moon. And without getting too technical with it, it's just a much superior piece of glass. They are parfocal. I can drop any lens I want into it, and I really don't have to do a whole lot of adjusting to the focuser to keep it pretty steady if I'm using all the TeleVue eyepieces that go along with it. And by the way, PowerMate is a brand, not a brand. It's a model name for a brand, and the brand is TeleVue, and TeleVue make the PowerMates.
Okay.
And they make them in 2-inch formats. They make them in 1 1/4 inch formats. And anybody who's doing photography usually eventually will end up getting a PowerMate when they're using any kind of magnification.
Okay. And then there's one more question, and then I'm going to let you go for a while because I know we have a ton of stuff to cover still as well with stacking and all that sort of stuff. Which is now, what is the difference between a Barlow and a photo teleconverter like the Canon 2X EF adapter?
They're kind of the same, really.
Okay.
So a telephone, hello. A teleconverter is basically, it's a Barlow 4 camera. So basically
Cool.
it's a little piece of optics that you put on the front of your camera. So let's say you've got a 200 mm focal length lens, but you're starting to enjoy taking pictures of birds and you need to get in there like 400. You need a 400, so rather than spending a couple $1,000s on a 400 mm focal or zoom lens, you just buy a teleconverter, and you can buy them usually for a couple $300, put them on your camera. And when you do that, it basically magnifies your lens that you're currently using. So if it's a 200 and it's a 2 times teleconverter, it'll turn it into a 400.
Very cool.
And Barlow does the same thing. It basically, but it's for telescopes and it's not quite as complicated. But it's the same thing. It's just an optic that you drop something in, and it basically magnifies and gives you, it makes things larger, if you will.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, now on to lunar telescope DSLR photography.
Okay, so what you see there is a picture of, actually that's my house. That's not the house I live in, unless I'm a hobbit. My hobby
That looks
house.
like your observatory.
It's my hobby house. And that's my observatory. And you're probably saying, well, why do you have a telescope out when you got an observatory? Well, the reason is this. The reason is because shooting the moon, once you get used to putting your scope together and getting your camera set up, you can do that in the matter of just minutes and get a really nice moon shot. But the camera that I use and the system that I use in the observatory is designed more for deep space and is very wide angle. So I don't want to disturb that just to go out and take a picture of the moon. So I threw that out there as the reason why. But you'll notice on that photograph, you have a nice little EQ5 tripod, and it's a go-to mount. It's using a 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, and it's using a DSLR. And that's basically how that night I was out capturing pictures of the moon. So those are the things typically that you're going to use when you go out. So I'm just going to cover just a couple of things. Then we're going to get into the real meat and potatoes of this. So you're going to need, for shooting an image of the moon through a telescope, you're going to need a camera that the lens can come off, because you're going to have to hook it up to the telescope. I'm going to show you how to do that. And then it's highly recommended that you get something with a flip screen. And the reason being is if you're out there shooting the moon and you're shooting it and it's at very, very close to the zenith and it's up really high for some time for the reason it's up there, you're going to have to get down on your knees to be able to look into the back of your camera to be able to see, am I in focus? Am I even on the target?
Yeah.
Well, with the flip screen, you can just basically let the scope go where it wants and just turn the screen so you can always be standing up looking down into it. So that's going to be your best friend for a while.
Perfect.
That's an important feature. You're going to need a T adapter and a photo adapter. And a T adapter, of course, is proprietary to the camera. So if you have a Canon camera, you need a Canon T adapter, or if it's a Nikon T adapter. And then the other thing you see in the middle, this thing right here, that's basically, they call it a photo adapter or a nose piece. I call it a nose piece. And those two things go together so you can slide the camera into the telescope.
There's a quick question about Canon, like, can you use a Canon camera? Just make sure that whatever adapter you get for your camera, whatever T-ring adapter you get for your camera is unique to your camera, because Canons, Nikons, mirrorless will all have different threads. And so you just have to make sure you get the right one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also you can get, so depending on your telescope too, with that little T adapter on this image I just showed you here, this section here, you can get that in either a 2-inch barrel or you can get it in a 1 1/4 inch. So depending on what you have for a telescope, some of the small reflectors just have a 1 1/4 inch on them. And some of the entry-level telescopes are only 1 1/4 inch. So you can accommodate that.
Okay.
So the telescope and mount, these things are important to know a little bit about, because when you're imaging the moon is actually one of those things that are very forgiving. You can use a refractor, which has a very short focal length, which means that the images in that are going to be relatively small. But with a Barlow, you can fill your frame, which is really nice. Or on the other hand, if you use a compound scope like this one on the end, which is called a Schmidt-Cassegrain, it's a has a very long focal length. That one there would have like 2,000 millimeter focal length.
Wow.
And you probably are not going to be able to get the moon in the frame of the camera unless you use a reducer, which is the opposite of the Barlow. So it'll actually reduce the amount of, or reduce the field of view so that you can get a wider swath of the sky in a scope of that size.
Cool.
So, and I'll talk about that too.
Sounds good. There was a question about Barlows. I've been trying to save this for an appropriate time. Are there Barlows or PowerView that you can attach a DSLR to, or would you need a teleconverter to magnify an image in a scope?
No. Basically with the Barlow, and do I have one here? I normally have one here, but you know what? I don't right now. But anyway, a Barlow is just basically, actually, I'll show it to you here. If you look at the end of that Barlow, so what you do is you take the eyepiece out of the telescope and you're going to put the Barlow in there. So, and then typically you would put the eyepiece back in the Barlow. But if you're going to use your camera, instead of putting the eyepiece in the Barlow, you put that nose piece from your camera in the Barlow. So your camera is sitting in the Barlow and the Barlow is sitting where your eyepiece would normally go. So yeah, so your camera will just fit right into that. And you can get Barlows that are 2 inches and you can get Barlows that are 1 1/4. So depending on what your system is, there's always something to accommodate it with a Barlow.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. Where was I?
You were, there we go.
Okay, so there's different types of telescopes and there's different kinds of mounts. And on this mount here, we're going to talk about today. Actually, I have one of these right here, and this is called the Evolution mount from Celestron, and it's what they call an alt-Azzy mount. Basically, the telescope goes up and down and side to side, and that's how it tracks the sky. This one on the other side, which you absolutely have to have for deep sky astrophotography, is a German equatorial mount. And what its job is to do is to actually track the sky the way that the sky moves. So, so basically this one you have to polar align, it has to be pointed north and so on. To set this one up, you don't have to go through that process. All you have to do is, and I'm going to show you how to do it anyway, so I'm not going to explain it now because I'm going to show it again. So, but anyway, it's a very, very simple setup for this type of telescope. So it's what they call a fork arm design. And those orange circles that you see there are basically the clutches. So you can move your scope up and down. So if the batteries die on you, you can still use this one manually. Whereas some of the SE mounts, the ones they had before this, if your battery died, you were out of business because it locked up all the gears, right?
Ooh.
So this makes that much nicer. So that's basically the kind of things that you'll need. Now, when you're doing lunar planetary photography, there's a friend of ours, actually a member of our club, Emile Cormier, and he's done some fantastic shots of Jupiter and shadow transits and so on using his Dobsonian. So
cool.
Yeah, so you can use alt-Azzy because the reason you can is these objects are so bright, you're just basically taking fraction of a second shots, so you don't have to worry about streaking and trailing and stuff. But when you're doing deep sky stuff like that you will need this for, your targets are moving and you're taking, sometimes 5-10 minute exposures. So, it has to be dead on and it has to travel the sky properly. I will get into that a little later too. So I think that is about the slide section done. So I want to now.
While we're transitioning, can I ask you a quick question from one of our Toronto members? How much would it cost, do you think, to add a motor drive to a manual German equatorial mount?
Depends on the mount that you have. You can buy motor sets for, say, if you've got a Skywatcher EQ3 that's manual. I've actually got one of those upstairs, and I bought a motor set for it. And the reason I did is I wanted a really light mount that I could take with me and put on a really light telescope and just have something that could, quickly set up and quickly tear down, but something that would give me accuracy in tracking the sky. So you can go to, if it's a Skywatcher mount, you can buy Skywatcher motor assemblies. I think if you buy both right ascension and declination motors, including the gear or the go-to system, because you can buy them that'll just track the sky, or you can actually buy them and have a go-to system with it, which means you can find stuff. So without the go-to system, I think I paid, I don't know, I think it was around a couple hundred, 250 maybe for
Okay.
the motor system. And it was a real simple install and it worked beautifully. Put your thing on there and it comes with a little battery pack and it comes with a little manual control. So you can, you can slew back and forth and all
Oh
that kind
man.
of stuff. So it's really, really nice. And again, if you want to add a go-to system, well, then they can get, sometimes I would say you might as well just go buy a mount. Because by
Right,
the time
yeah.
you buy a hand controller and the motors and all that, sometimes there's $600, $700, $800. You can buy a really good used mount for that. So.
Okay, cool. And last question, which is where do you buy stuff like that? I assume go for your local telescope store.
Yes. In fact, there are a number of telescope stores across this country who are actual brick and mortar stores, but you can get to them. And the place that I always recommend people go to is Canada-wide Astro Buy Sell, because the Canada-wide Astro Buy Sell gives you two different ways that you can purchase telescopes. If you're really tight on a budget and you don't know if you really want to get into the industry or into the hobby, and you want to buy something and try it out with not a lot of investment, there's a whole used section there. But it's by people who have bought telescopes, and there are always people that take care of this stuff. And I have not really run into any problems there. But the main thing is, on top of that, all the retailers in Canada are also there on the top of the screen. And when you go up there, you'll see All-Star Telescope in Calgary. You'll see Ontario Telescope. You'll see Con Telescope. You'll see what used to be Lear Nature, which is now Astronomy Plus. These are all really good folks that love this hobby as much as you do, and they will treat you so well. And if you can buy from them and support them, do that, because you're going to develop a relationship with these people, and you will not get better service from these people in this industry. So I can't
support local.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go Canada, go. Okay. Am I stop sharing now or no?
Yeah, stop sharing. We can see just your beautiful face.
Okay. Okay. So that's it's me now.
Yes, it's you.
Oh, okay. It's little me, so I couldn't tell. Okay. So can you see what I have here?
Yes, we can. Sorry, I was looking at the questions. Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, so basically what I have here was that telescope we were talking about just a minute ago. Remember the one I told you that was the Evolution that had the red round discs and so on, so you can move the mount around?
Right, yeah.
So that this
Oh,
is,
there you are.
Okay, so what this is basically what they call an alt Azzy, which just means that I can turn my telescope up and down like this, or I can move it back and forth like this. And how it tracks the sky is it'll take a short, it's almost like, just think about a set of steps, walking up a set of steps. So if I'm tracking something that's coming up in the east, going to the west, it's going to track over and up, over and up. Yeah, it sounds like a workout thing. Maybe so
get our calisthenics in.
Over and up, and that's how it tracks the sky. And so that's, and that's all you really have to do, because when you're in any one of those positions, when you take a picture of the moon, it's just going to be, it's pretty much going to be that quick. You're not, unless you're doing video, but even then, 30 seconds, so long as you're tracking the moon, 30 seconds, you can get 1,000 shots. Trust me, alt Azzy is all you need for that kind of photography. So that's basically how that works. The nice thing about this, if I'm going to go and set up for a night of photography with my camera, because now we've already done all this, I'm going to take this thing, I'm going to put it away, because the star party's over and I don't have to deal with the public anymore.
The public are great.
I don't mind. I absolutely love it.
All of you 107 people here, you're all wonderful.
But it's nice to have that me time, right?
Yeah.
So, so basically what we're going to do when we go out with a scope like this, whether you buy the SE mount, whether you buy this, whether you already have one, you're going to take your telescope. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put your mount together. I'm not going to disassemble all this, but I will take the telescope off, because this is what you're going to do when you go out there. So you might as well see how it's done. So basically I'll take my scope off here. There we go. Okay. So now we've driven to our site that we're going to look at the moon. And by the way, you don't have to go to a site to look at the moon or the planets, because they're bright. You can do it right in the city, or you can do it in your backyard, right? But a lot of people like to get together with their friends with their scopes and just go out and spend a weekend. Some guys go fishing all weekend. Some guys take pictures of the moon, right? So basically what you're going to do is you're going to take all your stuff out of the car. You packed it in there. You brought everything with you. And you're going to set up your tripod first. That's the first thing you're going to do. So your tripod goes on the ground. And with the all Azzy system like this, you don't have to worry about setting it up to north. You don't have to worry about Polaris. You don't have to worry about polar alignment. That stuff we'll do on the next week. We'll get into that. So basically all you can do is you're going to put it on the ground. You're going to make sure that it's level, nice and even. Now, if you want to take a little level with you, you can, but most of these mounts have a little bubble level, which this one does. And so you just want to make sure that you're nice and level. That's quite important. Once you've got that all set up, it's level. And the next thing you're going to do, I'm just going to clutch everything up here. Then you're going to take your telescope out. Now it's out of the car. Now you got it in your hand. And you're going to slide it onto your mount. So now the telescope is on the mount. And we're just going to tighten it up just for a second because this is going to be you're going to have to unloosen this when you add the camera after, because we need to be balanced to be able to have our telescopes mounts work properly. If we're really heavy on one side, this thing's going to struggle and it's not going to track the sky nicely. You'll be struggling with it, and you'll probably end up giving it a little bit of a hit or something. So, so we need to make sure that it's balanced. Right now, this is balanced quite nicely for observing, because what I have in the back is just an eyepiece, a diagonal, and the telescope, and just the finder scopes. That's all that's on there. Okay. So once I've got that done, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to align my finder scope with my telescope, because if this isn't done, it can be a heck of a thing. So what you do is you find yourself, because if you're doing this, usually when you're setting up, it's not dark. It's usually dusk. So you can see things off in the distance, right? So just basically look at something in the distance and get it in your eyepiece. Get it in there. It's off the distance. I'm going to get it nice and focused. Okay, it's not quite centered. I'm just going to center that up. There it is. Beautiful. Okay, so it's right in the center of my eyepiece. Once it's there, now I'm going to turn on my finder scope. And there's usually a little red dot if you're using a red dot finder scope. And I'm going to look through that finder scope and I'm going to turn on that red dot. Now that red dot, let's say I'm looking at a mailbox across the way. I'm seeing the mailbox in the telescope, but I'm not seeing the mailbox in my red dot finder. My red dot finder is somewhere in space, right? So what you need to do is there are two adjustments on these. One is for up and down, and one is for side to side. So you're going to turn this on. You get that little red dot that's basically projecting out there, and then you're just going to, with the side to side and up to down motions, you're just going to get that little red dot exactly on that same mailbox that I see in here. So I look in here. Yep, I'm right dead on that mailbox. And my red dot is bang on that mailbox. Now my optics are lined up. So when I go look for stuff in the sky, so long as I can find it in my finder scope, which is giving me a very wide swath of the sky, so it's easy to find, I know it's immediately in the center of my telescope. That's important to do, especially in imaging. Okay, so we've got that done. So now we're good to go there. So we're set up. So the next thing we want to do, oh, you know what?
What's up?
I'll do this after. I'll see what time I have after.
Okay.
Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to get rid of the eyepiece, because we're going to hook up a camera, because we're taking photographs of the moon.
So is that, I didn't realize that whole thing was the eyepiece. I figured it was just a little lens that popped in on top.
No, actually that one, and there's actually something on the back of this one that we'll talk about.
Okay.
I'm just going to get this adapter off this camera so I can put it on there. Oh, I see why. There we go. I'm just going to pretend, or actually no, I do have a battery.
You can pretend with the battery.
There we go.
That's actually a big tip. If you're ever going outside, don't forget your batteries. I did that when I went to visit you guys in New Brunswick, and it's a nightmare. So
That's right. The batteries, everything is important. Like make a checklist. And I know what, and that's why I was showing you those screenshots, is because some of those screenshots you can just take your cell phone, find a video on YouTube after, put it on pause and screenshot it, so that when you go out, you'll have your own checklist of things you're going to need. So you're going to want your memory for sure. You start some full family pictures because you go click full.
Oh no.
So who gets axed from the family, right?
I don't need my sister now.
We don't get along, so So anyway, so make sure you bring lots of memory, lots of battery power, not only for your camera,
but for the telescope.
Your mount requires batteries too. Now the nice thing about this mount, this Evolution mount, it has a lithium-ion battery built right into it. So you charge it up and it's good for a solid 10 hours.
Oh, wow.
So, and your sessions are usually a couple, 3 hours each night. So, I'm good for 2 or 3 nights with this thing. So I don't have to bring any battery for that at all.
That's cool.
The beauty of this. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're taking our camera out. We're going to remove our lens, right? So bye-bye lens. And now we have to put on that T adapter. So basically, there's your T adapter. This one is proprietary for the Canon camera. So
perfect.
There's our T adapter. So now we're ready to put a nose piece on this. But yet I have not put something to connect on there. So I have to put on, before I even get to that, I want to show you this, what's on this. I'm going to talk about this after. This is one of those focal reducers. So this takes my 1500 millimeter camera, or telescope, and it brings it down to, what's 15 times 6.3? Get a calculator?
15 times what, sorry?
6.3.
I'm not this good at math.
1500 times 6.3. 12 something?
15 times, sorry, what was it? What was the first number?
1500.
Oh, 1500.
Times 6.3.
9,450.
So basically 950 is what the focal length is now by putting this on, right?
Wow. Okay.
Because if I'm taking a picture of the moon with a scope as powerful as this, and if I've got a camera with a small chip, I'm not going to get the whole moon on there, so I want to reduce it. I want to shrink it. On the opposite of what we talked about with the Barlow, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's what this is. So you put that on the back of your camera, or I keep saying camera, telescope. There we go. That's made by Celestron, so that's the proper one for that. And then you put on what we call a photo adapter. So anytime you use a reducer, this is the only thing a lot of people forget to take into account, is anytime you use a reducer, you have to have a certain amount of space between it and the actual sensor. Because if the distance isn't right, then the edges will be all kind of funny, right? So you got to make sure you got the right spacing. So you just put on that, what they call a photo adapter, and that gives you the exact spacing I need for this reducer. And then your camera, get this on, just basically screws onto that.
Cool.
Now, if the camera is kind of all tilted funny, which it is in this case, you're thinking to yourself, well, how do I fix that? I can't turn my scope. You just loosen the ring like this, and then orient your camera to where it should be. Because you don't want the moon facing the other way when you say, I just took a picture. Well, the moon didn't look like that when I saw it.
It's a little upside down, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And you need to do that anyway, because if you're taking anything in the sky, you want to frame it right, because your sensors usually aren't square. They're usually longer on one side than the other. So you want to frame it right. So now I'm actually hooked up with my camera to my reducer to my telescope. The only thing I want to put on here, and I recommend everybody get them, because depending on where you are, in the Maritimes, we have a lot of moisture. We get a lot of moisture at nighttime, and most places in Canada do. It's hot in the day, then it cools down at night. We get to what we call some humidity going on, and we want to keep that off of the screen. We want to keep that off the optics. So, because with this kind of a telescope here, the glass is right in the front. So if you've got it even pointed up a little bit up, which is where it's going to be when you're looking in the night sky, dew will collect on that faster than, and then your night is over. You know, you can't really do anything. So buy yourself a dew shield. So all it is just a little, it's just a little plastic thing. It's kind of made for this 6-inch scope. This one actually I can use it for a 6-inch or an 8-inch. Can you see that? Yeah, okay, yeah. For a 6-inch or an 8-inch, it's just a matter of, if I want to use an 8-inch, I just open it up.
Oh, cool.
And I can use it on my 8-inch scope. If I have a 6-inch, which is this one, I'll just make it for the 6-inch scope. And what this will do, no pun intended.
That was a good one. It took me a
This will
second.
keep dew off the front of your telescope for quite a few hours, you know, without actually getting into dew heaters and all that kind of stuff. There we go. So that just basically slips on the front of your scope, and now you've got a nice dew control system. Plus, you have a nice hood, which keeps stray light from getting into the camera, into the front of the lens. So that's really nice. So now that we've got that all done, the next thing we have to do, it's front heavy, isn't it?
Whoa.
What am I going to do with that? Okay, so you got to rebalance. So anytime you run a telescope and change from an eyepiece to a camera, and you have to add certain pieces of gear and equipment, it changes the weight on one end or the other of your telescope. So you have to balance so that your scope is always balanced, so that there's no strain on the gear, so that it will track the sky for you properly. So balancing these is a joke. All we do, you go down to that little handle on the bottom, and I'm just going to basically manually slide this back a little bit. I'm going to crank it down again. I'm going to release my clutch. Oh, now I'm back heavy, so I got to scooch forward a little bit.
That's pretty easy.
So, and again, I'm showing you this because you are going to have to do this. A little bit more. You're going to have to do this when you're going out to shoot images of the night sky. There we go. It's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
There we go. So now we're balanced. Now that we're balanced, that part is over. We're good to go. So now we've got the camera on, we've got the right spacing, we've got the optics lined up with the finder scope, we've got our dew shield on, we're nice and balanced, we're nice and level. So now all I have to do is just set up the telescope so that it knows where it is in the sky. If I'm using GoTo. If I'm not using GoTo, then it doesn't really matter. But in this case, I am. So let's go to it.
Perfect.
So I turn on the telescope, and it's verifying its packages. And basically what this is a GoTo telescope, which just simply means that you can be a little lazy and not know the night sky. I always recommend that you go manual and learn the night sky. That's the nice thing about this, so that you actually have to hunt for targets on your own. You'll have to learn the constellations. Where are things? Where is this? Because even when you're setting these up and it's asking you to point at 3 stars, if you don't know 3 stars, you don't know what to point it at, right? So, so this one here says, so press enter to begin. So enter. And I'm just going to do a 1-star alignment on this.
Can you do this in the daytime, or are you doing this?
Enter. I'm just going to go through this quickly because this is not necessary to kind of cover. And it's asking me to go to Alberio. And now, if I know where Alberio is, with this one, now all I got to do, maybe. Get my speed up here. Come on now. Oh, Alberio. Enter. All right, so there we go. Now we're motoring. I'm going to say, let's just say Alberio's up there. So now
seems about right.
And I'm kind of pointing at it, but I'm not sure I'm there yet. So now I'm going to go to my little dot finder, and I'm going to get that little dot right on Alberio. Perfect. Then I'm going to enter. It's asking me just to confirm everything. Align. Now success. I have it. So now if I want to go to the moon, which I can't go to now because I think right now it's probably below the horizon, but if I did, let's just say I went to the moon. Oh, and place on the side. There we go. Okay, so let's say the moon's over here. I'm just going to pretend it's there just to save some time.
Yeah.
Okay, there. I'm on the moon. I'm lined up. Perfect. Good. Now I'm lined up with the moon. The only thing I have to do now is I have to go in here and make sure I'm doing what we call lunar tracking, because these things will track the sidereal rate, which is the rate of the stars. You can track the sun, which is the solar rate, which is the rate of the sun, which is different than the rate of the moon, because the rate of the moon, from our perspective, travels at different speeds. So we have to make sure our system is set up for that. So I just go in there, tracking, lunar, click, good. I'm locked on the moon, I'm tracking, I'm good to go. So now we're going to start taking some photographs. So what do we do to get ready to take a photograph? Well, first thing we do is we take our flip out screen we talked about earlier. You see what I'm doing?
There you
I'm
go.
looking down at it instead of doing this, right? This is not cool. Unless you're young, then you know, but
And then sure, lie on the ground, do whatever you want to. Yeah.
you have to do the worm to get around, you know. So there's, now I've got I'll turn my camera on. Okay, so right now I'm pointed out at the moon. Now I'm going to make my settings. So here are the settings I'm going to use to shoot the moon. I'm going to go to, on the top of my camera, this Canon one, go to manual. That's the first setting I'm going to make. Now I'm on the manual setting. The second thing I'm going to do is with the moon, depending on the phase, let's say it's first quarter, and I'm looking for the lunar X and all that kind of stuff. Well, I got about half brightness of the moon, right? So it's illuminated about 50%. So that's still relatively bright. So I'm going to start out, just for fun, I'm going to start out with 1/200th of a second. That's pretty fast shutter speed. And I'm going to match that with my ISO. ISO 200, shutter speed 1/200th of a second. That's where I'm going to start. The reason I want to start there is I want to keep that ISO as low as I can, so we're not running into any kind of issue where I have to use long exposures, because if you're not tracking 100%, and if you've got to take a longer exposure because your ISO is too small, then what happens is you run into the risk of actually getting a blurry moon image. So what you want to do is open the ISO up as much as you can to keep your shutter speed really, really, really low. So the faster you can make that shutter turn off and on, then the more stable your image is going to be if you're only taking a single image. If we're not talking video, we're just taking a single image. The reason being is because our sky, depending on our seeing, changes all the time. And what I mean by seeing, for those who don't know what that is, basically there's a lot of turbulence between us and getting outside our atmosphere. And anything that we look at that's bright has got to shine through that, that atmosphere. And lots of times there's a lot of turbulence up there. So if you think about you're standing on a hot pavement in a day in the middle of summer, and you're looking at a car coming, and you're seeing the car, but it's all wavy and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's basically what you're going to get in your image if the seeing conditions aren't good. And that's one of the reasons why I say check your clear dark sky chart, because it tells you what your seeing conditions are. So you'll know when I'm going out that my sky is nice and steady, I'm going to get terrific results. So anyway, so that's the reason that you want to make sure that your camera setting is the fastest shutter speed you can get away with getting a nice bright illuminated image. Okay, so now I'm pointed at it. I've got my ISO set up. The other thing that you're going to want to do is with the moon, you don't need what they call long exposure noise reduction, and all the cameras have it. So it's just in your menu settings on the Canon ones. You just go right over down to the custom setting, and it's just basic, a little button in there that says, do you want to use long exposure noise reduction? No, you want to shut that off, because if you don't, what it does, it actually takes a dark frame for you. You take your image and then it'll take it dark right behind it. So that means for every image that you take, it's going to take one of those. So if I'm taking 50 images, well, I'm actually going to be taking 100. And,
wow.
And it's pointless because you don't need noise reduction on the moon, right?
Right, yeah.
But you might want to use it if you're doing a wide swath of the sky. Maybe you want to get the North American nebula with a camera and a nice zoom lens. Well, and you don't want to do darks and all that kind of stuff. Well, then you can use it then. But realistically, just turn it off when you're doing lunar or planetary work, because you don't need it. It'll just take up more energy and time than you really need. Once that's done, I leave the white balance on automatic. I don't use that. And this is my own personal thing that I do. You can do what you like. But I always go to my camera setting, and instead of putting it on landscape or neutral or all that, I put it to monochrome. I turn off the color. Because the moon really, realistically, most pictures of the moon that you see are black and white, typically. Right. And you will get a lot more dynamic and tighter image if you shoot in monochrome than if you shoot in color. Because unless you want to process color, it's there. You can process it, absolutely. But if you're not going to do that, put it on monochrome, and then you'll find that your camera sensitivity will work better. And when you blow up your image, you'll be able to actually see and get better, sharper focus.
Cool. Good to know.
Okay. So once we get all this done, now we got to focus. This is the fun part. So we got the moon. We know what's in the center of our screen. We can see it right there. It's beautiful. We're tracking. So now what we have to do is figure out how to focus this thing. So what we're going to do first is we're going to do a rough focus, just looking at the moon just the way that it is. Just do a rough focus. Look at the outside of the circle of the moon. Don't worry about surface detail, and make that circle as sharp as you possibly can. Once you've got that sharp moon looking thing, like almost like when you cut and paste something, real sharp edge, you've got a pretty close focus. Then you're going to go to your camera, and it's got 5 times and 10 times zoom. You press your 5 times zoom. Now the moon is push. Now it's really in there. You can really see it. Go ahead and do your focus again. Press it one more time. Now it's 10 times. So this thing is just huge. You go in there and you get a real tight focus, and then you press it one more time. It goes back to the native focus. And now you're ready to take your pictures. That's it. Perfect. Click, click, click. Or as Boomhauer would say, click, 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 click. So there's a number of ways you can do that. No, this is what you're not going to do. You're not going to do this, right? Because if you do that, you're shaking everything, and you're going to get a blurry picture. That's not what you're going to do. 2 things. You can either put your camera on a self timer. So in 2 seconds, I got that on. So I'm going to press the button, hands off, everything's settled down. I've got my image, no shake whatsoever. Or if I have a remote release, like this one, then all I have to do is put that on the side. And this one's wired. You can get them wireless, certainly. And then I'm going to take my intervalometer, I can never pronounce that correctly. And I'm going to set this up for timer. I just want just a couple of second delay. Okay, and then my next mode, I'm going to say, okay, how long an interval between shots? Oh, I don't know, let's say 2 seconds. Just to give the camera time enough to settle down from the movement of the image. So that's good. And I'm going to say 0 on the exposure, because we've already got the camera telling us that we're using 1/200th of a second. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to go finally, how many shots do I want? So let's say, for just to make this go along quickly, I just want 5. 2, oops. That's it. We're done. Okay, so we're all set up. All I have to do now, if everything is working the way that it should, I got to make sure that my camera's on continue shoot. I'm going to press the start button, counting down. There's the first image. There's the second image.
Cool.
There's the third image. There's the fourth. There's the fifth. Okay, I'm now done my imaging run. Okay,
so
I
just
can take
quickly,
the rest of the night now and enjoy viewing the sky. Because now I've got my images, then I'm going to take them home and I'm going to put them in the computer.
Just quickly, the reason that you gave it a 2-second delay was to allow the camera to stop moving after the shutter had closed, because the shutter causes a little bit of shake too, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. You can lock up the mirror on it. I've never tried it on this one, but anyway, it just guarantees that once you've made that shot, that it's nice and stable.
Okay, sounds good. And I'm just going to make a quick announcement for folks. Paul, it's 10 to 5 or 10 to 6 in New Brunswick. We've been having a lovely time. I know some folks, we say that we're going to be done by 5, and I know you wanted to go through a couple different processing things. Would you like to go through them now and run late? And for folks who can't stay, it'll be on YouTube and you'll be able to watch it after. Shall we do that?
Yep, we'll do it.
Okay,
right
so if you can't stay the whole time, 100%, I understand. I will send the link to the YouTube video. There it is. It's in the chat. So if you have to run, go and watch it afterwards, and Paul will go through all of the steps. And for those who need to leave as well, we will be having another session on astrophotography next week where we're going to do deep sky stuff. So come back for that as well. And now, Paul, on to the processing of the images that you just took on your telescope.
and about next week, it will be primarily on, there'll be just a little bit on, there'll be not really any slides to deal with next week. It'll primarily be on just the difference between the two mounts, and then we're just going to get right into processing. So for those who are wanting to know how to process those, I mean, we have to know how to take it too, but okay. All right, so now what we're going to do, I'm going to get out of that screen. And I'm just going to open Photoshop, because now we're at the stage where we've taken the photos, we got them on the chip, we're taking them home, we're throwing the chip in the computer. And now we're going to open up the computer. And just bear with me for a moment while I open up my software.
No problem. I always find for those who are going out and trying this for the first time, I have a little case that I put all of my memory cards in to keep them from getting wet and to keep them safe and to keep from losing them because they're small.
Yes.
So I definitely recommend doing something like that to keep track of all of your stuff. And it may just be that I'll do my best to find a good list of stuff to take out to do astrophotography with. And we'll see if we can post that on the YouTube link. And if not, I'm sure we will come up with one soon. And as we do have a couple of new projects that are coming down the pipelines, which I am going to remain mysterious about, but should involve some of these kinds of things like a list and that sort of thing.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we're just getting Photoshop up and running. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again.
Sure. Sorry, there was one quick question before we get into processing.
Yes.
How did you or do you get such a large and clear image of Jupiter?
So I'm sorry, I didn't quite.
So I think you had a picture of Jupiter before with a shadow transit on it.
Okay, I talked about it, yeah.
Yeah. So how would you get a nice, clear, large picture of Jupiter?
That was my Photoshop just updated.
Oops.
You'd have to have use the same system we just talked about. Instead of using that reducer, you're going to want to use a Barlow, because the native focal length of that telescope, 1500 millimeters, you want to get 3000, 4000 millimeters if you can, because Jupiter is so tiny. If you don't magnify and bring it up big, you'll never get the depth and the detail. You'll be able to see the moons around it, but you won't get any surface detail. So you've really got to make it big. All the other things we talked about, exactly the same thing, except we're magnifying much larger.
Okay.
Okay, does that answer
That answers the question.
Perfect. Okay, so let's say we took, say 10 or 15 images. Oh, I didn't share my screen yet, did I?
No, we haven't seen it yet.
Share.
There is it. There.
Oh, am I sharing the right one?
We can see the Creative Cloud
Perfect.
side of it.
Okay, so I'm just going to shrink that down for a second. And I want to find a file that we're going to be dealing with here with those images.
I think we may be on one of your second screen and not the screen that you want us to be on. So we can see the like the Adobe stock, the pink Adobe stock.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Let me stop share and then share screen, and I'll go to the other screen.
Gotta be hard to have all these desktops, eh, Paul?
Oh, I'm telling you. There, can you see that screen?
There
now?
it is. Now we can screen that one. Yeah, there's a Leo triplet.
All right, so I'm going to open Photoshop again, and now I'm going to open the files. Hopefully this will work right. Desktop. And it's called Rask Moon Shots. Right there.
There it is.
Oh, look at that. I did that twice. And it's, okay, I'm gonna have to do it this way. This is no problem. So what we're gonna do, like I've taken this and I've actually processed these before. So all those secondary white ones are just the data, but it just take no second. I'm just gonna do a few of them. So
Sure.
so let's control, take that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. And we're gonna open those. And that should open in Camera Raw. Yes, it does. I'm going to push Camera Raw over so you can see it.
Thank you.
There we go. So now all those 10 shots that we went out and did all that crazy work to get are now in the computer. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have a look down. See, we got them all. Yep, those are all the same shots. So what we're going to do, and this is kind of the easy part. We're going to take I'm going to take the top photograph and I'm going to make some adjustments to it. So when we go over to this side, this is basically all our sliders that we're going to do just a little bit of work on the moon, because the moon doesn't require work a lot. If you took it with the right exposure and you've got a nice bright moon, but yet it's not blown out or anything like that, and you're not too dark, you've got a really good starting point with the moon. So over here, the first thing that I would probably do is just have a look at my exposure. And if you look at the top, there's a histogram up there. And you can see that I've got mine set up so that if I'm too dark, that white arrow will come up. If I'm too bright, this white arrow will come up. Let me just take my exposure over and show you. If I overexpose, right? So that means I'm way too bright. So I'm going to take that down so that white disappears. But I'm at the same time, I'm looking at my picture. And I got it down to what I think is reasonable. If I find it a little dark, which I don't, the reason that you're seeing dark because a lot of around the moon is black. So, but I can lighten it up if I want to, take the blacks up, but it's not going to change that arrow. So don't be too afraid of that with lunar, so long as what you see is clear. Then what I do is I go down to these 3 sliders here, and they're called the texture, the clarity, and the dehaze. And I'll take the clarity first, because what this one does, this kind of works with your dynamic range right away. So if I just take and put it to my left to the right, watch what happens to the moon.
Ooh.
Especially along the terminator, how that darkens and gets more dynamic. Look at that. It's almost like it's starting to pop, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There.
Nice.
So if you want to see a bigger version of that, I just blow it up 1 or 2, then I can get it in there a little deeper, right? So now I'm starting to see some of that ejecta ray around Copernicus. Cool. I can start to see some of that darker Maria, or the lava. You know, I can see a lot of stuff. I can see, if I just press that little hand button up there, then I can move the moon back and forth. So I can see the different areas. And I can look at all kinds of nice things in this particular image. So it all looks really, really nice. So I kind of like what I did there. I'm going to play around with the texture just a little bit. So you can see I can sharpen it up a little.
Nice.
So that looks kind of nice. Not too sharp, because remember, we're going to stack a lot of these together.
Which should sharpen it up.
Yeah, so I'm going to just dehaze it just a little bit, which will take away that haze and give us more dynamic detail that we're looking at on the moon. So right there, that looks kind of nice. I think, you know, for me, I'd be happy almost just with that single image. Mm-hmm. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go up here, right where it says film strip. We're going to press that and we're going to select all. So what that's done, that's selected every one of those pictures we put in there. Then I'm going to press that same button again, and I'm going to go sync settings. When I hit sync settings, it's going to take everything we just did to that top image, and now it's going to put it up. It queues up a box first, sorry. And in that box is just a whole checklist of all the things that you want it to do. But let me just cancel that for a second, because I need to shrink the moon back to the same size that all the other moons are. Uh-oh. Okay, so let's say I made a mistake and I did this. This is okay. We're going to go to sync settings. Oh. So part of that sync settings, there's one called crop. I've actually cropped in a little bit. At least I think I did. Or did I change my aspect ratio? We're going to find out. Let's say we cropped it. And we're going to say, okay. That's gone through now and it's done the exact same thing to every one of those photos. So
Perfect.
each of those photos are now exactly the same. They've all taken that goodness that I just put in from all the few adjustments that I did to the moon. Now I'm ready to stack them. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the images. So I'm just going to press right down here in the bottom where it says open images, cancel and done. I'm going to open the images. What this is going to do, this is going to throw all those images back into Photoshop for me, one at a time. That's why I only did a few, because we could be sitting here for a while. So it's throwing all those images back in there. And at the end, it's going to actually give us the stack, like the master image.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It stacks it for you?
Oh, no, it's going over here in a second. Sorry, my fault.
Okay.
After these are in. Okay, they're all in there now. So the next thing we're going to do, excuse me, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to File. This is in Photoshop. And we're going to go to where it says Scripts. And I'm going slow, so people want to kind of write it down. And then once I'm in Scripts, then I'm going to go down to where it says Statistics. And I'm going to click on that. It gives me another box. And here's the box. So in this box, this is the box that's asking us, what do we want to do with these images? So first thing I want to do is I want to open all the files. And it puts all my images in that little box. So now they're all there. So I'm happy with everything. Everything looks good as far as that moon is concerned. I really don't need to do anything with browsing or sorting or anything. It's just, again, I'm only doing the moon. I'm going to press OK. Now it's going to go through and it's going to stack that image.
And as it does this, just a reminder that for those who are still with us, that you can go and watch this on YouTube again if you want to do this set. Like if you go and take moonshots tomorrow and you want to check it out, go back, follow on the video tomorrow as well.
Okay, so there it is. So there is our stacked image. It's only 6:02. I think we made it.
We did it. We did it.
so there is. So there's your stacked image. And so from there, if you want to, touch it up a little bit, whatever the case, if you want to blow it up and have a look at it, just hit your little magnifier key, hit your little plus key, and then you can blow the moon up, have a look around, and
wow,
the detail. I'd post that on Facebook. I might even do that later.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a nice image, and that's the whole process. It's easier to take the photos, stack them, and make the image. It takes a lot less time to do that when you're doing lunar imaging than it does to set up and get it all ready. But I had to kind of explain the steps to get to that point, because if we miss any of those steps that walked us up to the point where we just did what we did, then we would probably not have a good image.
Absolutely. Yeah, that has made it, watching you go through every step has made it seem so much more reasonable to do, just to see how quick you can get that processed into something beautiful. And yeah, you can spend hours on it if you want to, but you can make it look really good, really fast.
Absolutely. Yeah, because there's the moon, unless you're going right into the details, the moon is a very easy thing to take a picture of. And then what I showed you that took us, an hour or a little better, realistically, I could go up my backyard in 15 minutes and have that up and running and have a picture back on my computer and out on Facebook in less than a half an hour.
And the key is putting it on Facebook. That's what ties it all together.
Yeah.
There's a question from Leon, if you don't mind if I ask you questions.
Absolutely. No, I'm good.
This is an interesting one. Do you suggest to process all images before stacking them, or just process the final picture afterwards? I haven't seen someone process all the frames before stacking before. It doesn't make a difference.
Well, that's kind of what I just did. In that, when I was in Camera Raw, is I took one image because I'd actually looked at these images and they were all the same. Like there was no issues with any of these images. So I just took the one image and I made the corrections to it, and then I put before I put the images together, I hit that sync button, and then actually it went through and it did each individual image for me, right? It took out everything that I did because I was happy with the first image that I adjusted. Once I adjusted that like that, then the computer does all that adjusting again for each and every one of those photos, but way faster than I could.
Very cool. And I do think it's worthwhile processing it before, at least getting it to a point where you're kind of happy with it, and then you can make final touch-ups afterwards, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Because I mean, you can take that. Oh my gosh, there's so many things you can still do with that. But realistically, it depends on what you want to do with it. Like we talked earlier about what do I want to do with that? Do I want to study the moon? Well, then maybe I would take a little more time and, and do some, like you said, spend some time on it and adjust it more. But I like it for just looking at that phase of the moon. I like it just fine.
Perfect. There was a comment, interestingly, on YouTube. I don't know anything about this, but it was from Mark, who said that you use TOPAZ DENOISE AI. He was very pleased and asked you that you mentioned that in the stream because it's helpful for beginners, especially if your telescope isn't big.
Yes. TOPAZ it's a company that makes plugins for your software. Like I'll show you exactly what he's talking about.
Okay.
If I go to my filters, I'll go down. I have Topaz Labs right down here.
Oh, cool.
And you see where it says Topaz DENOISE and Topaz Sharpen. So you can use either one of those algorithms if you want to clean up your images. I do a lot of daytime photography, birds and that kind of stuff. And every one of my shots, I use that denoise because I'm shooting really, really early in the morning. So lots of times, a lot of the picture is dark. And like any DSLR camera, that's when you're going to get your noise. So these denoise work wonderful for that. So you can apply that to the moonshot. So if your shots are somewhat noisy, if you find them somewhat grainy after you maybe over sharpened or something, then you can go back to denoise. And what it does is this. I'll just kind of do a quick denoise to show you. I just press the button. It's going to go over to the other screen. Once it comes up, I'm going to put it back to you because it's 1 second. It's just loading the image. There it is. And it gives you 100%. Whoops, can I get that over there? There we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
look at good.
Wow, that's beautiful.
So this is actually after it's been sharpened. So if you want to see what it's done, you go to the split screen, and then you can actually go over and see, okay, there's before, there's after. It's like taking a curtain and revealing, right? Before.
Yeah, very cool.
So if you don't like that, you can just do an automatic setting. You can go in and do it manually if you want to. You can look at different perspectives, but it always goes to 100% because it wants to make sure that you're totally happy and the noise in fact is out of that image, especially if you go ahead and you want to blow it up and have it printed large.
Right.
You don't want to have it printed large and be disappointed. I spent $50 on a print that's full of noise, right?
Right, for sure.
Yeah, so once you're done with that, you just simply hit apply. And it's just going to go through its little thingy there. It'll only take just a brief 30 seconds, if that. And then what it does, it applies all the changes that you made right to the image you were looking at before you even hit that denoise thing. So it does it all for you automatically. And I'm using this as what we call a plugin. So this is just a plugin to my Photoshop.
Cool. And we've had a couple shout outs to Topaz DENOISE, especially if you are taking pictures of planets with smaller scopes, which would be just a heads up for those who are planning to take images of Mars, for example, once it's at opposition in October. This would be a really good thing to have for that.
Absolutely, yeah. And the reason for that, of course, is when you start to really, really magnify, and if you don't have crystal clear night, seeing, you're going to deal with some stuff that you're going to try to take out, and you're going to get some artifacts in there. So no question. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Unless anybody wants to see more of that Photoshop stuff, I think I'll stop sharing.
That's all good. I know you'd mentioned that you were going to show processing a video as well, but we can always save that for next time if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I can do it. Let's see. It depends on who's there. I mean, if you want, I can do it now. But
voice your opinions in the chat.
What's that?
I just asked folks to voice their opinions in the chat if they want to see it now.
Okay, good. Yeah. It doesn't take that long to do. It's just a matter of taking a video, throwing it into Auto Stacker, and once it's stacked, then throw it back to Photoshop and process it.
Okay. We've had a couple of people saying yes, please, and I guess those who don't want to see it can head out if they need to, and always come back later and check it out on YouTube. You have more time. So if you're able to, Paul, let's plow on ahead.
Oh, right through it. Okay. All right. So let me just turn off. Right now, I'm just going to turn off Photoshop. No, actually, no, I'm not. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Just a sec here.
No worries.
Just give me a minute here. I have to, there we go.
And
Okay.
I did see that, Rick, you're going to head out. So again, if anybody needs to head out or wants to head out, this video is up on our YouTube channel, and you can check it out afterwards when you have more time, after you've had dinner, what have you.
Okay, so I'm going to open Auto Stacker. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch screens, but that doesn't matter. I'm not sharing right now anyway. So, but I just want to get the I want to find that video, and I'm going to be processing.
No problem.
There's one right there. Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. Maybe I could put Auto Stacker over here. Just one sec. Oh, yes, I can. That's a wonderful thing. And there. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, I think. Oh, how do I do that, Jenna? I'm lost.
So, have you lost the Zoom window?
There we are. No, I got you just small. Oh, make that bigger. Oh, there we go. Got it. Found you.
You're disappearing. We're just trying to hide.
Okay, there we go. So I'm going to share that screen. So you should be able to see that screen now.
Yep, we got it.
Okay, good. So, so what basically is going to happen? Whoops, where did Auto Stacker go? It disappeared. Wow.
Is it on your other screen, or is it just hiding?
No, I think it just shrunk down. Yeah, it's all okay. Good. Okay, so basically, if we had gone through and acquired this, we're going to do exactly the same thing we did, exactly what we did with that DSLR. The only difference is we're going to use a high frame rate camera. So the setup in it and the focusing on it and all that stuff would be just a little bit different, but all other principles are the same. The only difference is instead of taking a shot every 1/200th of a second, we're going to be taking, 1,000 shots in 30 seconds. And that's not what I did with this particular video. I can't even remember how many frames are in this. It doesn't matter. It's just for demonstration, but it's the same principle. So you see on my screen, I have some shots there, and I have an actual one that's got the film strip on the sides. Right. So that's my AVI, that's my video. So that's the one that we're going to put into Auto Stacker. So I'm going to open up Auto Stacker, and I'm going to explain to you what Auto Stacker is. Whoops. Shrink that down for a minute. So Auto Stacker is a stacking software. A lot of people in the astronomy world are very familiar with Registacks. And I can't, oh, there we go. And Registacks does the same sort of thing. But to be totally honest, I find Registacks very unstable. And you're crashing more than not. They're both freeware, by the way. These are freeware. Oh, okay. And but I found with Registacks, if I was to put more than 500 frames in, it would crash on me, and it consistently would do that. And I've tried, I don't know how many different things, and I just couldn't get it to work. So my friend in Bactouche, Emile Cormier, he turned me on to this Auto Stacker, and it's a stacking software that is so stable and so flexible. It does a lot of really, really good stuff. And how you spell it is AUTO, capital STAKKERT, Auto Stacker. And it's a free download, and it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of software. So you'll notice that it comes in two sections. It comes in the section where we're going to open and manipulate, and then it comes in the section where we're going to choose frames and put what we call alignment points on, so we can stack all these images up. So the first thing we need to do is open the image we want. So I'm going to press my open button, and I'm going to go back to that video we had open somewhere. Well, of course I lost it, hey?
You minimized it. It's there. It's just minimized.
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure.
I don't know where it's gone. Okay, that's fine. I'll find it over here. Just a sec here. It's right in there. Click, 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 click. There it is.
There it is.
I'm just going to move that. My mouse is not working very well for me. So I'm going to take this particular video. I don't know if I can just drag and drop it or not on this computer. No, I can't. So I have to open it. So open, double click it. Okay, it's open. It's just showing over here. Excuse me for being a little fumble fingered on this.
No worries, no problem.
Okay, so I need to put that over here. Okay, so that's under RAS Moonshot for stacking demo. Okay, that's where I was just looking for the file. Okay, so let's go back here. So we're going to open that again. Why is it opening that?
There we
Desktop.
go.
Rask. There it is.
There it is.
Click on that. Click on that, and I'm going to open that, and there it goes. Now we've got it in this big old box over here. Now you're saying, well, where's the moon? I don't see anything. Well, it automatically throws it in at 100%, so it's like huge, right?
Wow. Oh yeah, there it is.
So there's the moon there. Did that throw it? Yeah, it must have. So I'm going to shrink that down because that's way too big for me to deal with.
There we go.
There we go. So now we have the moon set up the way that we're going to deal with. So this is just a video. So what we want to do now is we want to do what we call an image stabilization anchor. This is basically the point where we put a nail in, and every one of them wherever we put that nail, that's the where it's going to kind of focus on that point, and everything is going to get stacked to that area. So I'm going to put it on this crater just above the straight wall, and I think it's just control and click. There we go. So there, that's my anchor point for all of my videos to be stacked. That's the first thing we do. Now I'm just going to open this up. Click. Am I on the right screen? You're seeing the picture of the moon, yes.
Yeah, we can see the moon. Yeah.
Okay, so now we just have to do a couple of simple things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to choose surface image stabilization. So if you look at image stabilization over here, we just choose surface because that's what we want to deal with. We're not dealing with the planet, we're dealing with the surface. I want to deal with improved tracking so that it tracks and stacks very nicely. And I'll leave that on expand. And then I'm going to go to what they call a global for the frame. And what that does, every time you hover over anything in this software, it really tells you what it's going to do. So if I go to global, it says quality is determined by the entire frame. So that's what I want to do right now. So I'm going to hit global, and I'm just going to analyze it. Press a button. And you're going to see in the center of the screen here, the surface image stabilization, it's actually analyzing. And if down the bottom, it's just kind of running through its paces.
While it's going, there's a question. Is there a reason you chose that particular, I suppose it's a tiny crater, as the anchor point?
Just because it's a small point, and that particular dot in that particular area has got some good sharp areas. I could have went over further, actually, over into Tycho,
right?
And which is a little bit more dynamic. I could have used that, but I'm just going to try it there, and we'll see.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff is experimentation, of course. And you'll do that. The other day, I probably did about 5 renditions of this on this particular moon, just because I wanted to find which one works better.
It does help to have for the software that's doing this to have higher contrast, I think, and more texture to be able to adjust it.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, this wasn't the video I chose. I chose another video. I chose a close-up one, but it went to this, but that's okay. It's all the same. Okay, so now once we've got that done, then we want to sweep the frames in the right window. That's right over here. See where it says frames? So once we've done this, it's basically laid up all of our images in terms of the top 100% for quality. So what we want to do here is, if you look at this section right here where it says Q 100%, I'm going to grab that little slider and I'm going to slide it over. And as the more I slide it over, the more it drops. See, it's 67, 64. That's the percentage of quality. So you want to cut that off at a certain point. You don't want to take it down to 20%. You're going to stack everything that you got, and you're going to have frames that really aren't great quality based on where you put that anchor point, right? So right here, you see on the graph on this side, it's got that green line right here. Mm-hmm. That's where we are in the frame. So right now, that's at 16% of the frames. I'm going to take it up to 20, say to 20%.
Oh, there it is.
Well, 23, 19, 20.7. We'll leave it. We'll call it that. So that I'm taking 20.7% of those frames. So once I've got that done, excuse me, I'm getting a little dry. So I have to choose my alignment point. So this is kind of important, this part. So I'm going to shrink that back down again so I can see the whole moon. There we go. So over here in this section here, these are your alignment points. And the 24, 48, 104, 200, those are just different sizes of squares. So I'm going to start off with 200, which should give me the largest squares. And I'm going to place my alignment point grid over the moon. So it places the first one. You can see how big the square is. And there it goes. It places
Whoa.
all those points. So each one of those is an alignment point on the moon. If I want to add more, say if I want to put one over Copernicus, I just click on it. If I want to put one here, put one here, put one here, I can put them wherever I want to, or vice versa. If I feel that I don't really need them there, then I could just do a right click and take them off.
Huh.
Okay, but this is what it chose for me. It looks like it's covering it quite well. So let's just say this is good enough, and we'll go with that. So once we've got the alignment points placed on there, we're going to have to go over here and do one more thing. We're going to set this, remember we changed this to global, the first? We're going to put that back to local, because now we're dealing with each alignment point. That's it. Now we're on alignment point. I'm going to leave you a screenshot of this whole rundown. So when people, if they want to download this, if they follow these instructions step by step, they're basically 14 steps, they will get good results immediately. So we got this. And now we're going to click Analyze one more time.
So that's.
So now it's going through. And as you can see, it took all the alignment points off the moon because it's now taking that data and now it's doing what it needs to do. It's buffering. It's going to go for a reference image. It's going to do a number of things here.
And those points are essentially points that it can identify on each of the individual frames and make sure that they're all lined up perfectly, right?
That's right.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Yep. Just like stacking anything. Like if you go to Deep Sky Stacker and stack for a deep sky image, you always have to put a reference frame because that's the frame that everything basically is anchored to. And that's what
lines up to. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We did a little bit of this, and I know there's someone on YouTube who's watching who is oddly interested in the Astro Image J tutorials that I made. I didn't think that many people would be interested in the Astro Image J tutorials that I made, but they're to help students do exoplanet transit research,
Okay.
and you have to align the images, and some of them rotate a tiny bit because as the telescope moves or if it flips over the meridian or such, and it's essentially this of choosing stars to get the frames to all line up properly, but it's much more manual.
Oh, wow. It sounds like it. Wow.
But it's interesting. This is watching this, I'm sitting here going, man, I wish I had that ability.
Yeah, I'm surprised that I'm sure there's a reason for why they have to choose specific stars, but
they do have like an automatic stacking feature, but I find it takes a million years, and so I end up just doing my own.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, so this is all done. Now what our next is enter this is the important part. We want to enter the frame percentage to stack. And we do that up here. You see these right down here where it says frame percentage to stack? Up in the corner, the small software. You see the little green 14?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
but we decided we wanted to do 20.7%. So I'm going to take that out and I'm going to put 20.7. Actually, I'm going to say 20. It doesn't go point. I'm going to take 20% of the frames, and that's how much I want to play with and stack, right? And I think that is it. Now, the only other thing to consider, right up here underneath where we just did the 20%, it says there's a sharpened blend for raw on here. Mm-hmm. So if you check that box, what's going to happen when it actually gives you your final video, your final image? It's going to give you two. It's going to give one that's sharpened, and it's going to give you one that's not. So you can choose between which of those two images you want to work with.
Cool.
All right, so we're ready to go. So all we have to do now is press stack. This will take not too long to go through, and it's going to stack our image up. This was not a good image. This was a good acquisition, which is why I didn't want to choose this. But this is the important thing is going through the steps to show you how to use it.
And then this is also neat because it's accessible. People are used to taking videos, so yeah. It's worth giving a shot if you have the chance. And thank you for showing us all the steps in it too.
Yeah, no trouble. My gosh, I could say anytime I do anything lunar, I use this auto stacker, and it's just wonderful. It really works beautifully. Awesome. So it's just right now it's already done everything, and it's just going to save the image. Now where it saves it to is the place you took the original image from. So if you're wondering, where did my picture go? Because that's the one thing we all do, right? I saved it. Where did it go? God, no.
Oh, I've
Yeah.
done that so many times. I've gone in and like searched my, it's like, okay, well, recent documents, where did it go?
Yeah, so what this does, this throws it right back into where we took it from, right into the same file. Okay, so it should be there now. So I actually took this image from Rask Moonshots. So it should be there. And there it is.
Hey.
Yep, that's at 2080 Di. So now what I'm going to do, you see, right there it is right there.
Yeah.
That's the one we just did.
Cool.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off auto stacker. We don't need that anymore. We got our video. Now what we're going to, or we got our image rather, P20 should be right there. And there it is.
Oh,
There's the P20.
cool.
And the 20, the reason it's called P20 is because we chose 20%. So if you want to know where that file is, put a funny number on it. Choose like 43%. It'll pop up. Just look for the first number. Oh, there it is, 43%. And that's how you can identify the video.
Cool.
Okay, so let's throw this into Photoshop.
Excellent.
And from here, it'll be very quick.
Okay.
And let's open up Photoshop.
And for those who are, there's a quick question for those who are watching on YouTube. They just asked, where's the link to sign up for this stuff? And so I'm going to send out the link on YouTube in the chat. If you do want to sign up for future sessions, the registration link is in there and you can join us. We hang out in the chat, everybody hangs out. And we also do have some Q&A here. There are some questions that I don't verbalize in the stream because we have some wonderful folks who join in, especially notably this time, Leon has been answering tons of questions, as has Peter from Toronto, and we've got a couple other folks who help as well. So some of the questions, Dan Meek often helps too.
Okay.
Some of the questions get answered in the Q&A. So if you want to see those, it's worth joining in on the Zoom webinar.
Okay, so I'm back in Photoshop and I just want to open that file. There we go. So let's say I'm going to take this picture. All I got to do now is I open up this file right over top of Photoshop. Just drag it and drop it. It'll throw it right into Photoshop. There it is.
Beautiful.
So it's just that fast. So and I know I went through and because I had to explain, it took a little time to go through this. But realistically, you can fly through this in 10, 15 minutes easily.
That's awesome.
So now I've got my image. This one was actually shot in color. So the first thing I would do with this is I really don't like the blue background, and I'm not interested in color imaging this. So I'm going to go to my image processing. I'm going to go to adjustments, and I'm going to go to saturation, and I'm just going to take the color out.
It's gone.
She's gone. Okay, and then from there, it's the same process that we did on the other image. Take it into Photoshop if you want to just kind of play with. If you want to play with some adjustments, maybe you want to start off with levels because it looks a little bright. Oh, by the way, you see those artifacts in the back of this? Well, you don't see that, sorry. Those artifacts in the back right there.
Yeah.
They're from stacking, and they're what they call stacking artifacts. Because when we put all these together, they weren't all lined up when they were taken. So they lined them all up. So you're going to get this these odd artifacts on the outside of the frame.
Yeah.
So what we need to do there first is crop the image, and that'll take care of them. So we just hit crop, just crop it in a little bit if you want to. Whoops. A little bit if you want to, and then just put that moon in the center of that crop, and then that'll take care of all edges all the way around. Hit yes, and there. Now we've cleaned up those artifacts. Those are gone now. And then simply again go back into lots of people just use and like to use. Go to your filter and go to your camera raw. I find camera raw very, very nice to use. And because it gives you more flexibility and all your things are right in front of you. So you can just kind of play around with the clarity a little bit, see how immediately and the moon's starting to look more dynamic. Maybe I want to sharpen it up just a little bit more, take away the dullness. There it is. Look at that. Copernicus is looking good. Maybe I want to take a little of those highlights and cut them off just a little bit. And you'll notice up on my histogram, remember the thing we talked about before? All those little rough lines on this side of the histogram are gone because when we did that crop and cut off those stacking artifacts, that's what those were. So you don't want those there. You want to get them out of there so you don't confuse the histogram.
That's cool. That's something I mean, I feel like I don't want to say I'm competent at Photoshop, but I've used it for a while. I didn't know that. That was really neat.
Yeah. So then once you've got it done to where you like, if you find that that's nice, I find that a little hazy for my liking. So I'll dehaze it just a little bit. Oops, grab the slider. There we go. Oh, that's better.
Nice. There you go.
Yeah, that's more dynamic. And you know what? There's my shot. So I'm just going to hit OK. It's going to throw it back into Photoshop. Ka-ching, it's all set up and ready to go. I hit File. I'm going to save it as, I don't know. Let's save it as a JPEG because I want to throw it right out in Photoshop or in
right onto Facebook.
Save it to my desktop. Save. It's there. OK. And now I'm ready to throw it on Facebook. Done.
Perfect. Good. That's awesome. Thank you for showing us all the steps there.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a learning curve to any of this, as I think anybody knows. But I'm going to leave you this. Whoops, if I can show it to you. If I can get move it. There it is. This is what was sent to me by my friend Emil in Bucktouche. And this is exactly what you would go through to use to take your image and put it in auto stacker. And if you follow this, will come out with a great image right from the get-go.
Cool. Okay, so here's the point where if you're on right now on the Zoom or even on YouTube, take a quick screenshot and that'll walk you through it, which will be great.
Yeah, I'll leave it up for a couple of seconds there.
Perfect. And then there's a question, 2 questions, and I think that's pretty much all we've got, which is good because we are now at 2 full hours, which has been fantastic. It's easy to lose track of time when we're learning so much. So the first question was regarding your computer power. What power are you using? This is an area I know nothing about. The numbers thrown out were i5, i7, i9, I think.
i7.
i7. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then there's a note that, how do you screenshot? That's a trickier one. Okay, I would recommend for those of you who are not sure how to screenshot, just go and check out the YouTube video and pause, and then you can write it down from there. And then the last question
or what you could do, sorry, Jenna, is just take your cell phone, put it on pause, and put it on your cell phone, download it as an email to yourself, and just save it as a file.
There you go. Perfect. And then one last question about Camera Raw. Does Camera Raw that you can download with lower versions of Adobe photo programs have the same functionality?
I would think so, because Camera Raw basically is just it's everything that comes off your sensor without any manipulation. So so long as you've got a raw place to put your like in Camera Raw itself, it's whatever's off your camera, then it's taking everything that you possibly can on the camera. As far as lower versions of that, I'm not sure. I'd have to really look at them, to be frank. Yeah.
All good. Perfect. That is fantastic. I think that wraps up all our questions. Paul, thank you so much for your time today. For those who are still here as well, just a reminder that we have a second session on astrophotography next week at same time, 3:30 on Tuesday. I've lost track of time because time is irrelevant these days. Whatever Tuesday is next week. And so we will see you all then. Paul, any final words?
Yeah, just next week, we will be getting into a little bit more in-depth processing, because we're going to be doing deep space photography. And so there's a little more in-depth stuff to that, but I'll make it as simple as possible, because it's like everything else, once it gets in your head, it just rolls out. So
absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul. Everybody, we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us. And have a wonderful rest of your week. For those who are available tomorrow, we have a star party where we will have Frédéric Baron joining us. She is the Education and Public Outreach Coordinator for the Institute for Research on Exoplanets at the University of Montreal. So she is very passionate about brown dwarfs, and I can't wait to talk to her about it. We will be joined this time by a member of ours from Halifax, who's going to be bringing us our telescopes. We hope to have you guys at Astro by the Bay joining us again soon. We will figure out a better plan for that, and we will see you all next time.
Okay, just say one more thing before we go.
Yeah.
Sunday night astronomy show. I'm a part of that, and I forgot to mention it, but we do things similar to this, but not quite as in depth. But if you wanted to pop up on there on Sunday nights, the Sunday night astronomy show, Astronomy by the Bay.
Astronomy by the Bay's YouTube channel. It's fantastic. You guys are great. And then for tomorrow night, that's at 8:00 p.m. Eastern time. And you guys, it's at what time? 8 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday nights as well?
On Sunday nights. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. Everybody join there. I will post their link. I don't have it on hand, but I'll post it in the YouTube description. And we'll see you all next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, Paul.